Tennis world explodes. Experts declare Eala is now bigger than Sabalenka, and the numbers don't lie. Hold on tight, because the tennis world just got flipped completely upside down, and nobody saw this coming quite like this. Something extraordinary is happening on the WTA Tour right now, and if you have not been paying close attention, you are about to get caught up fast. Because the conversation that is exploding across the tennis community is not a small one. It is not a minor debate about rankings or statistics or who had the better season. This is a full-scale eruption of expert opinion, player testimony, and crowd behavior that is pointing at one undeniable truth. Eala, the young woman from the Philippines who captured the world's imagination, has become the single most electrifying draw in professional women's tennis today. And the people saying it are not random commentators scrolling through social media. They are former professionals, current top-ranked players, and the greatest champion the sport has ever seen. When voices like that align on a single topic, you stop and you listen. So let's get into it, because this story is absolutely wild from start to finish. Let's begin with the man who lit the match that started this entire firestorm. Sam Querrey. Now, if you are deep in the tennis world, you already know exactly who Sam Querrey is and why his words carry serious weight. But for anyone who needs the background, here it is. Sam Querrey is not some armchair analyst who picked up a microphone and decided to have opinions about professional sports. This is a man who lived it. He spent years competing at the highest levels of professional tennis, grinding through the tour, understanding what it takes to survive and thrive in one of the most demanding individual sports on the planet. He knows what greatness looks like when it is standing right in front of him. He has felt the atmosphere of packed stadiums and high-stakes matches. He understands the culture of professional tennis from the inside out. So when Sam Querrey opens his mouth and says something definitive about a player, the tennis community pays attention in a way they simply do not for most voices. And right now, Sam Querrey is not just paying attention to Eala. He is going completely off about her, and he is doing it in the most direct and unambiguous way possible. Querrey looked at the WTA landscape heading into the upcoming tour schedule and made a declaration that sent shockwaves through the entire tennis conversation. He said, without hesitation, without qualification, without any attempt to soften the blow, that Eala has become the single biggest draw in women's tennis. Not one of the biggest, not among a group of exciting young talents worth watching. The biggest. The one. Full stop. And then, as if that was not already an enormous claim to stake, Querrey went even further. He started putting Eala's drawing power up against the most recognizable names on the tour. He started asking the questions out loud that everyone else was tiptoeing around. Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco? And the answers that came back from the experts gathered in that conversation were stunning. Yes. And it is not even particularly close right now when it comes to the energy in the crowds and the atmosphere she generates everywhere she goes. Now, before we go any further, let us be absolutely clear about something important, because this story requires that distinction to fully land. Nobody in this conversation is claiming that Eala is a better tennis player than Aryna Sabalenka. That is not what is being argued. Sabalenka is the world number one. She is a multiple Grand Slam champion. She is one of the most powerful and technically gifted players the women's game has produced in recent years. Her accomplishments inside the lines are real, they are earned, and they are extraordinary. Nobody is taking that away from her. But what Querrey and the analysts surrounding this conversation are doing is drawing a very specific and very important distinction. They are separating on-court performance from something that exists beyond the baseline. Something that cannot be measured in aces or winners or first serve percentages. They are talking about cultural magnetism. They are talking about the kind of drawing power that fills arenas, that makes people travel across oceans, that creates an atmosphere so electric that even the players competing against Eala are left shaking their heads in disbelief. And on that measure, on the measure of raw pulling power and the ability to make people feel like they absolutely cannot miss a match, Querrey and his fellow experts are saying Eala stands entirely alone at the top of the mountain right now. The comparison that kept coming up in the expert conversation, and this one is particularly fascinating, is the comparison to Carlos Alcaraz and the wave he created on the men's side. If you followed men's tennis over the past couple of years, you remember what happened when Alcaraz started making his run. The crowds went absolutely insane for him. Tournaments that had never quite cracked the mainstream suddenly found themselves at the center of the sports conversation because this young Spanish player was generating a kind of excitement and energy that the sport had been missing. People who had never watched a single tennis match in their lives started tuning in because of him. That effect was real. It was massive, and it fundamentally shifted the cultural conversation around professional tennis. Now Querrey and the experts around him are saying that what Alex Eala is doing right now is that same phenomenon. But here's the part that genuinely blew people's minds. They are not saying it is comparable to Alcaraz. They are saying it might actually be bigger. Let that sink in for a moment. They are saying the wave around Alex Eala could be larger and more culturally significant than even the Alcaraz phenomenon that transformed men's tennis. That is the scale of what these experts believe is unfolding right in front of our eyes. And it is not theoretical. It is not projection. It is happening right now, at real tournaments, with real crowds, producing real moments that are impossible to fake or manufacture. The evidence that Querrey and his group are pointing to is not difficult to find because it is everywhere you look. The scenes at Doha was something else entirely. The crowds that showed up to watch Eala compete were described as insane, and that word keeps getting used over and over again by people who were actually there and experienced it firsthand. These were not casual observers who wandered in because there was nothing better to do. These were passionate, emotionally invested fans who came specifically for her, who were screaming and cheering and creating an atmosphere inside that venue that tennis rarely sees outside of the biggest Grand Slam finals. For a tournament in Doha, for a player who at that point was not even ranked inside the top 10, the scenes were completely unprecedented, and Doha was far from an isolated incident. The same thing is happening everywhere she goes, at every tournament, on every court, in every city around the world where she shows up to compete. The numbers that are being thrown around in this conversation are genuinely staggering when you sit down and think about them in context. Alex Eala is attracting fans from places that professional tennis has historically struggled to penetrate. She is pulling in audiences from Southeast Asia, from communities across the globe that have deep ties to the Philippines, from demographics that the WTA has been trying to reach for years without quite finding the right key to unlock. And Eala is not doing this through a marketing campaign. There is no manufactured viral moment behind this. There is no corporate strategy driving it. It is purely organic. It is the force of who she is as a person and as a competitor, combined with the extraordinary power of her story and the way she carries herself every single time she walks onto a court. The tennis world is not used to this. It is not used to a player who has not yet won a Grand Slam generating this kind of attention and devotion. And that is precisely why the conversation is so electric right now. Because what? Eala is doing breaks every conventional rule about how star power is supposed to develop in professional sports. Sam Querrey made another observation in the middle of this conversation that deserves its own moment, because it is the kind of thing that cuts right to the heart of what makes this story so compelling and so complicated at the same time. He floated the idea, carefully but unmistakably, that some of the top 10 players on the WTA Tour might be looking at the circus following Alex Eala around from tournament to tournament and feeling something complicated about it. He did not use the word jealousy lightly or recklessly. He raised it as a genuine possibility, as something worth considering when you look at the dynamic that is developing on tour. And when you think about it from the perspective of those players, it is not hard to understand why. These are women who have sacrificed everything to reach the pinnacle of their sport. They have won major titles. They have ground through years of brutal competition to earn their rankings. And then a player who is not yet inside the top 10 of the world rankings shows up and is generating the kind of crowds and attention and energy that they are not producing. That is a difficult reality to sit with. Querrey raised it because he is honest about the sport and about human nature, and because pretending that dynamic does not exist would be a disservice to the full story of what is happening right now.